Good afternoon. I'm sorry it's so exciting to be back for me. I don't know about all of you, but to be back at the Federation headquarters. I haven't been here in years, I think 2 or 3 years. And so, wow, I want to share this time and talk to people too, but let's do it after because Gil has to get back to Long Island for Shabbat. So we are very blessed today to have Gil Hoffman, Executive Director of Honest Reporting, which fights for Israel in the international mainstream and social media. He's been a lecturer on political strategy at Israel's College of Management and served as chief political correspondent and analyst for the Jerusalem Post for 24 years. Well connected to Israeli and Palestinian leaders, he has interviewed every major figure along the Israeli political spectrum, has been interviewed by top media on 6 continents, and is a regular analyst on CNN, Al Jazeera, and other news outlets. He was raised in Chicago, graduated magna cum laude from Northwestern University School of Journalism, and wrote for the Miami Herald and Arizona Republic before moving to Israel. He's a reserve soldier in the IDF Spokesman's Unit. He has lectured in every major English-speaking country in the world, more than half of the Canadian provinces, and recently made history in Hawaii by becoming the first speaker to have lectured about Israel in all 50 US states. All right. Lives with his family in Jerusalem, and we are thrilled to have him here today while he's visiting the East Coast. His topic for today is peace, politics, and plutonium. An insider's look at the impact of Israel's fateful election on the military and media battlefields. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Shelley. Thank you to the wonderful people here of Albany. It's great that on short notice, Rob, that you got this many people come out here. That definitely shows the commitment of the people in your community to Israel, or maybe you don't really work very hard. I'm not sure which one it is. Well, so I've spoken to all 50 states, not quite all 50 capitals. I haven't been to Topeka, but little by little I get there. And I've been telling people in Israel for years that the nicest people in America are in Albany. So. But I don't normally get to come here right before an Israeli election. This is the time that I'm working my hardest in Israel, writing a lead to the newspaper every day. And I wouldn't have been able to if it weren't for my independence that I declared on the 1st of July when I left the Jerusalem Post after 24 years. The following day I ran into Jonathan Pollard and I said, you served 30, I served only 24. He got married yesterday, a new kind of confinement. Yeah. And got to be intense in recent years because we had 4 elections, now a 5th in under 4 years. Don't worry, we're not quite as messed up as England, so I can feel better about that. They really have problems. But to put it into perspective, our political chaos, our election's November 1st, my daughter turned 6 the following day. She's already come with me to vote 6 times. Wow. 4 for Knesset, and there was a runoff race for mayor, so 2. And so she'll be voting a 7th time before she turns 6. And the last time I took her to vote with me, she, as I was parking the car, said, "Daddy, where's the water?" I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Aren't you taking me on a boat?" And I said, "No, we're going to vote." And she said, "But Daddy, we always vote. Why are you taking me on a boat?" And soon after our government was formed, I did take her on a boat a couple times. And we kind of thought maybe that government could last for a while. And it didn't. It fell apart on my last day of work. This was my headline, the last day of work. Israel heads to elections. Sorry to the people taping. I'm walking around the room for a moment. I'll be right back. Lapid to become prime minister. Not my last day of work at the Jerusalem Post. I worked till 11:59 p.m. and 59 seconds, and then I said enough because it was very symbolic that the government fell apart on my last day of work because I also had a small role in forming this government. I'll take you back in history. When an Israeli speaker says I'll take you back in history, they usually mean 3,000 years. You'll have to settle for 10. 10 years ago, there was a leadership race for a small party in Israel called Bayit Yehudi, 2 candidates above the age of 70, and 1 young rising star named Naftali Bennett. And after a debate between the candidates, Naftali and I hung out and talked for a couple hours outside where the debate happened in the cool August Jerusalem air. And I remember he did most of the talking, but he asked me one question. He said, "Do you know Yair Lapid?" Lapid had entered politics 3 weeks earlier, had been an anchorman on TV. And I had a get to know you meeting the previous Friday at his home in Tel Aviv. He's got this man cave with boxing gloves. He worships Muhammad Ali. And so I said to Bennett, not only do I know Lapid, but I think you guys would make very good friends. I said to him that you guys have a lot in common. And he said, "Really? Could I have his phone number?" And I gave him his phone number, and that's what led in part to the government that we have today, which they both served as prime minister. Now, in Judaism, we believe that if you make 3 shidduchs, 3 matches, then you go automatically to heaven. Well, I've made 1 political match, and I've been told if I make 2 more, I go straight to hell. So why did this government fall apart? Some people say it's because of diversity. And I don't think that's true. I think maybe it's because I'm already wearing my hat as the executive director of HonestReporting, which we'll get to soon. I think the government fell because of fake news. What happened was that there were disturbances on the Temple Mount. Everything in the Temple Mount gets magnified. It's such a sensitive place, but it wasn't that big a deal. And because of the media exaggerating it, the politicians had to exaggerate it too. First, the Arabs, who were really rather moderate, but had to look extreme for a little bit and flex their muscles, and that led to the right-wing politicians flexing their muscles, and things spiraled out of control. I don't think the government fell apart because of its diversity, which was a strength. We had, in the outgoing government now, the most diverse government in the history of Israel, possibly the most diverse in the history of mankind on this earth. Right wing and left wing together, very orthodox and very anti-orthodox together, LGBT and homophobic. It would be the equivalent in America. Ted Cruz and AOC formed a government together as co-presidents of the United States. If the people who invaded the Capitol that day, including the guy with the Viking hat, got in the room with the squad and said, "Can't we all just get along? What do we have in common?" That's how it's been, and it wasn't easy, but it looked very nice to the world, which appreciated that diversity. And a lot of the world, I think, also appreciated that they thought Netanyahu was finished. Well, we'll find out that soon enough. If he comes back and wins this election, it's going to look bad to a lot of people. they will interpret Israel as regressing. It will look even further bad to the world if there are right-wing extremist politicians who get prominent roles in that government, and if there end up being a lot fewer Arab members of Knesset. And this would be interpreted by the world as Israelis going to an extreme. The media will say that we are becoming more racist. And it's not true. But there's a lot that has to be explained, and may very well have to, by me and others. First of all, if Netanyahu comes back to power, you'll have to thank the terrorist attacks that are going on day in and day out. Netanyahu knows how to make people feel secure, either with brainwashing or using his superior rhetorical abilities, depending on which way you see it, that he is the only one who could make Israelis feel safe. And that would be the one reason why he'd come back to power. Israelis vote on security. Now, if there are fewer Arabs in the Knesset, that's also not proof that we're becoming more racist. It has to do with a couple political technicalities. The Arab voters like it when their party leaders run together. When they ran together in one party, they got 15 seats because there was 65% turnout. Last time they run in two parties, they had 45%. Now they're running in three parties. And the turnout's predicted to be less than 40%. I'll give you very basic journalism, major math. There are 1 million Arab voters in Israel. The electoral threshold is 150,000 votes. So you'd have to have 45% to have 450,000 divided equally, or all three parties don't get in. And you could end up having a situation where only one party gets in. Now, will it be because we're racist? No. It'll be because of math and because this government lasted only a year. That is not enough time for the Arab constituency to understand the significance of an Arab party being part of the government for the first time. It's not enough time for them to feel it where it counts in their wallet. We had, despite our political instability, the same Minister of Transportation for 10 years. And that meant that he could start building a highway, finish building a highway, start building a train, finish building a train. The people who live around that highway and around that train know that they get to work half an hour early because of him, and they appreciate it. No one can say that yet about Mansour Abbas. So that would be why he might not come back to the Knesset. Now, the rise of the far right, Itamar Ben-Gvir, is something that'll make Israel be compared to Italy, to Sweden, God forbid, to other places. And that also is not because of Israelis moving to an extreme or becoming more racist. First of all, he only increased his support when he moderated his views. There is right-wing trauma in Israel from right-wing people voting for politicians who they thought were right-wing and then formed a government that wasn't so much. There are ultra-Orthodox rabbis who have been passing away, and their successors don't command the same kind of loyalty as the rabbis from before the Holocaust. There's ethnic politics in Israel of Sephardi looking for a young, charismatic kind of leader. And there's, of course, the media and its ability to create a politician for ratings. You've seen that happen in other places too. But we're going to look bad. It's not even going to be true. And either way, what they are getting right is that this election has been not about any very serious issue like elections are supposed to be about war and peace and religion and state and security in Iran. No, it's been about one pathetic, overused Shakespearean cliche of to be or not to be. that has been the only question. And happy birthday, Mr. Netanyahu, today. Today, he turns 73 years, very young. His father died at the age of 102, so he could still have another 30 years left in his political career. And if he passes the abolished death bill and eliminates death, then he could be our emperor for centuries. You never know. Look, I'll tell you a story. During COVID, did your gyms close around here?
Yeah.
Wasn't that annoying? And did they reopen only gradually? Well, that happened by us too. My gym is in the Knesset, and I've been working out there for more than 20 years, taxpayers paying for my gym, which is nice. I have never seen anyone permitted in the Knesset gym to run without headphones, except for Netanyahu, who blasts his Fox News as he runs on that treadmill. And every other treadmill was closed for a long time. And so there was a line for that treadmill. And after a while, people just gave up waiting for him. And so I'm next in line, and I started writing to people who've run against Netanyahu in the past. He just keeps on running, and he won't go away. I finally understand how you feel. I said to these Likud politicians, in my 24 years of covering politics for the Jerusalem Post, I have never seen a greater discrepancy between what politicians say publicly and what they say behind closed doors than Likud politicians talking about Bibi. If you talk to them publicly, especially before an election, they sound like Christian evangelicals talking about Jesus. And if you talk to them privately and they trust you, they sound like Christian evangelicals talking about the day. It is that great a difference. And so what will decide this election? The answer is three things. So first of all, the electoral threshold, that 150,000 votes. A lot of parties are teetering on it. And remember that in Israel, we have 40 parties running in this election. Imagine the culture shock for me. I'm from Chicago, where you have only one political party. That's all. The last election for mayor of Chicago, the turnout was only 23%. And half those people were dead. And the other half were voting twice. So it's a very big difference. The second thing that will decide the election is the Arab turnout, which is unlike the Jewish turnout, which has been completely consistent at 70% over these four elections. Their turnout has been 49, 59, 65, 40. The last thing that decides elections in any country are the swing voters. Who are they? In the past, it's been very clear who swing voters are. Most intense election in Israel's history, 1996, Netanyahu versus Peres. The swing voters were obviously in the center of the political map. And so both sides went to that center. Netanyahu's campaign slogan was Netanyahu, Sim Shalom Batuach, making peace in a secure kind of way. So he was about peace, right? And Shimon Peres' slogan was Yisrael Chazaka, Chazaka, Peres. Strong, Israel strong with Peres, moving over right. The last election also was very clear who those swing voters were. We didn't have a right-wing camp and a left-wing camp. We had a to be and not to be camp. And there was only one party leader who refused, like my children, to go to camp. Naftali Bennett. And because he refused to join either side, he held the balance of power And that's how he got to be our prime minister brilliantly, with only 6 seats. Now, who now is the leader of the swing voters? There's no party leader who hasn't taken a side. By the way, you all know a lot of Israelis. Do you know anyone who doesn't have an opinion about Netanyahu? They either worship the ground he walks on or wish he died. I mean, it's that big a difference. We don't have swing. What we do have are what I call stability voters. Stability voters are people whose top priority is ending this mess, who realize how wasteful having election after election after election is, and who don't want us to look horrible to the world, look pathetic. We don't want to look like England. There are people who would say, I don't like Bibi, but he has the best chance of forming a stable government. Just let him do it. And there are also stability voters who will say, he's the cause of all the problems. We need to find out who put the final stake in his heart. So I'll give you the most likely scenario. I mean, still, out of 100%, 50% he forms a government, 25% we have another election, but the other 25, okay? So Herzog, the president, he by law can ask any member of Knesset to form a government. That's how it works. It's entirely at his discretion. But by tradition, he's supposed to ask the leader of the largest political bloc, the leader of the largest party, the leader of that gets the most recommendations from the other members of Knesset. And all 3 of those things is Netanyahu, no doubt about it. He gets the first chance to form a government. If he does not win 61 seats for his bloc in this election, he will fail. The person second on all 3 of those is Yair Lapid, whose party only gets 5 seats less than Likud in the polls. So Herzog would have to give him 4 weeks to form a government, and he would fail. Well, then what happens? You've got a chance for one more person to be able to form a government with the backs against the wall. If not, it initiates another election. The ultra-Orthodox won't like so much keeping Lapid and finance minister, very anti-Orthodox, Lieberman in power. And so maybe they'll join a government led by Benny Gantz, who is, in their view, not Bibi, but not as bad as Lapid. That potentially could happen. And there is a appreciation in Israel for Gantz, who just a month and a half ago led a successful war in Gaza, even though it wasn't really him that won. The war in Gaza was won by a man you've never heard of named Lior Hayat. Lior Hayat, until about a year ago, had the best job on the face of this earth. He was Israel's consul general in Miami and the Caribbean. And Lapid made him the head of the public relations directorate in the prime minister's office, which due to previous failures, the state comptroller required to have at every meeting of the Israeli security cabinet. And never before has anyone who's held this role spoken in the security cabinet. They know their place. And there was an incident in this war in which in the Jabalia refugee camp in Gaza, children unfortunately were killed. And so they were meeting as this happened. And the general immediately found out from the soldiers in the field that we didn't do it. And so immediately the diplomat speaks up and he says, release it to the media, the proof, the video right away. And the general says, of course not. It's going to require an investigation. It'll take a month or 2. And he gets up to leave. And the diplomat screams at the general, Atak teshev miyad. You sit down right now. And everyone in the room is shocked that the consul general speaks that way to the general. It's never happened before. And then they start realizing he's right. They backed him up. And they made the general release the information immediately. And that's how we ended the war in 2.5 days. It could have spiraled out of control. Finally, it took 74 years for the IDF to realize that the way that you win a war on the military battlefield is to win it on the media battlefield. You all know failures of the past. There was a war in Gaza a year before. Do you remember that Israel destroyed the Associated Press tower in Gaza? Well, that didn't look very good to the world. I mean, we gave them an hour to leave and to film it from every possible angle, but it took 2 months for us to tell the world it was the cyber tower of Hamas. I don't think anybody was listening by then. So we've had plenty of failures, and we finally learned from them about the importance of the success in the media war. There are 3 wars going on for Israel's existence today. There's the one on the military battlefield. We can all acknowledge we have an advantage over our enemies. We have a war on college campuses. Rabbi still here. That is a great disadvantage. And then there's the media war, where you might disagree with me, but I think it's pretty even. And it's an uphill battle, but if we fight it the right way, I think we could win. And I have just been appointed on the 1st of July, the general leading that war as the executive director of Honest Reporting. What a responsibility and what fun. Since I got that job, it's been 3.5 months, I've gotten 5 blatant anti-Semites fired from media outlets, including 3 at the New York Times. It started out the day that that war ended. And I said to my team, who are these people who covered the war from Gaza, where there's no press freedom? It is controlled by Hamas. And so they checked the journalists from all the mainstream media outlets. And sure enough, soon after, I hear a call from my team downstairs. Oh my God, Adolf Hitler. There was the guy who covered the war for the New York Times on his social media, posted pictures of Hitler and praised him. And a couple weeks later, I met with the New York Times bureau chief in Jerusalem, Patrick Kingsley, who hired that guy. And he said to him, you know what? You guys at Honest Reporting, you're better journalists than we are at the New York Times. You vetted him and I didn't vet him enough. Kol hakavod, all the credit to you, he said. He said, we're both in the truth-telling business and you guys got it right. That's what he said. And I really appreciated that. But then I told him, wait, there's not one, there's 3. Because about an hour before I left that meeting, I told my team, hey, check out other people in the New York Times, so I'll have them to talk about with Patrick. And a few minutes later, I hear a call from downstairs. Oh my God, Adolf Hitler. A photographer named Hossam Salem, who praised terrorist attacks against Israeli, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim worshippers at in various terrorist attacks around the country, including a horrible terrorist attack at the synagogue in Har Nof in Jerusalem, where terrorists went in and shot and stabbed people. That was the inspiration for Pittsburgh, Poway, Copenhagen, and what happened in New Zealand. He praised that, and another journalist there praised Hitler. And so we got all 3 of those from the New York Times relieved from their positions. There's also a woman named Katie Halper at The Hill. And just 2 days ago, there was a woman named Shata Hamad, who was going to next week be honored by the Reuters Foundation. If you're nodding your head, you've heard about this, which means we're finally getting the word out. We need a PR firm. If you could fund one, we'd appreciate it, because I'm not very good at that. This woman was going to receive a $50,000 prize and also a panel with Christiana Montour. And we looked through her social media, and sure enough, not only are there pictures of Hitler, she wrote about how she worships the man and is in favor of exterminating all the Jews. Over and over and over again, she wrote. And the prize has been rescinded, and so has her job at Middle East Eye, which is an anti-Israel Middle East website. So we've gotten a reputation for this. And there's a petition going on against us right now on social media. The most anti-Israel cartoonist in the world, named Latuf, made this. I'll take it around and show it, starting with you all watching on the phone. Here you have, I guess we are the media assassins at Honest Reporting. The last people to declare war on Honest Reporting was the Islamic Republic of Iran. Press TV is a propaganda TV channel from Iran, and they did a half-hour special about Honest Reporting. And they showed pictures of the staff. What picture did they show of me? Me holding up my little girl as she put the ballot into the ballot box. I guess she wasn't wearing the hijab. It was this ultimate evil, I don't know, that they wanted to show of me with the symbol of Israel on that polling station. But they did it. It was a vile, despicable thing to show. We found your children online. But we're getting attacked by Iran and by If Not Now and by all these unpleasant anti-Israel people, then we must be doing something right. But we could be doing so much more. People think that we're this big juggernaut now with all we've done. And I've got a team of 3 writers and 1 person on social media. 1. Imagine if we could have more. How much we could be accomplishing in defending Israel and protecting Israel and media outlets around the world. I already said that from when I took the job, 50% of what we write won't be about mainstream media, it'll be about social media. Because that's where the young people get their news today. And it's turned out that since then, the articles about celebrities on social media, they do much better online. A lot more people click on them than the articles that we write about the Washington Post and the LA Times. So there's a lot more that we could be doing, but regardless, we're going to have more and more success on the way. And Israel, in this show that the Iranian Press TV, they said that Israel is panicking, that the Zionist regime is about to crumble. And I can tell you they couldn't be further from the truth. Iran is under intense pressure right now on the streets. Protesters are demanding freedom, are demanding regime change and death to the dictator. They are the ones who are about to fall. And Israel will continue going strong. Am Yisrael Chai. So I'm happy to take questions before I take a very fast drive and hope I won't get stopped on my way back home. So I'm going to borrow your pen for a second. Thank you. When you call, just say your name before you ask your question.
My name's Danny. Got just so much to ask, but I'll just stick with this one question because media and the elections. But I had for a long time really followed Naftali Bennett. It felt like he would be really the best. I sort of tend towards what they call the right wing. And for me, the right wing in Israel is really just about security. Everything else is about the same as the U.S. as far as left and right. The right wing supports free medical care, all colleges, all that stuff. The only difference to me in Israel between the left and the right is security issues, me. So, but I thought Naftali Bennett would be the best alternative to Netanyahu, both because Netanyahu always tried to undermine him in every single way he could.
Sure.
Talked bad about him, said horrible things about him. And I think he was really afraid because I think Naftali Bennett was a bright man who had.
And you learned a lot from Bibi.
Pardon?
You learned a lot from Bibi.
He learned a lot from Bibi, but he's not, I think he also was more conciliatory in certain ways that Bibi would not be.
Mhm.
But so why was it that the Israeli public would never vote enough votes for Bennett? And he had to do that workaround to become prime minister, but they never gave him enough votes when he was with by Yehudi and with Shaked. I mean, I thought they were a good pair. Why did they never attract enough votes?
I'll tell you, it's not really fair to judge him, or because he existed in the Netanyahu era, and you know, if you've got this skyscraper, even if you've got very impressive buildings around it, they just can't compete on the Israeli right in their potential base. The post-Netanyahu era is going to be a fascinating period in Israel, whether it happens in 3 months or in 30 years. Because then we'll see. All these people have been waiting so impatiently. What happens? You might have 15 people run for leader of Likud in the first election of post-Netanyahu era, because it's this job of staying in power. You know, there only been 4 Likud leaders, Begin, Shamir, Sharon, Bibi, and they've all been prime minister. It's a great job if you can get it. And who knows when it'll open up again. So anyone who decided to try to take Netanyahu on, as Bennett did, as very few people only could have, it's just not a fair fight.
I just would have thought some people who voted for Lapid would have come over to see if Bennett was an alternative. On that, on the more.
These voters are different people. Yes, sir.
So just
What's your name?
With that,
What's your name?
Lev, sorry. Just building on something that you said about young people getting reviews from social media. So our kids are teenagers, high schoolers, a senior and a sophomore, and my son especially gets 100% of his news from the internet, and probably about 75% of it from social media sources. About a year and a half ago, I convinced him to remove himself from the online debate with trolls over Israel because it's just not worth one's time at that age. It's a safe place for college. Question is, how does one combat in your new role at HonestReporting? It's not centralized. It's not the New York Times. It's not going after Reuters. It's not going after the AP. It's thousands and thousands of sources. And I recognize that you're limited in your resources. But where does one begin? Where do we begin? What advice do you have for those of us that maybe use older forms of media?
You got a print paper at home.
We just stopped last week. But yeah,
Where are you sending your kid to college?
we don't know yet. We'll let you know. 6 months, 4 months, 3 months.
Can I recommend a college in Israel? You know, they're just as good and much cheaper.
We didn't want him going as far as Tennessee, so I'm not sure, but I'll take the recommendation.
You've got WhatsApp video now. You can see them. You just got audio. Look, there are college campuses in America that are better right now for Israel. If you're willing to go a little bit farther, there's Jew Lane down there.
He's on the list.
Okay, New Orleans. It's a challenge almost everywhere in America right now. Not only to be overtly pro-Israel, but to be Jewish at all. And it's not going to get any easier, unfortunately. I mean, we can try. I truly believe that winning the media war will make things easier on college campuses also. So what do we do on social media, Lev? First of all, we monitor everything going on, and we're going to be at the public also, action@honestreporting.com. People can email, all of you, when you see things, tell us about it, and help us out so we can go on the social media, tell the truth. Right now, there's a petition going on against us And we fought back against that, saying, reminding the people who signing it, you're endorsing murdering people in synagogues. You're endorsing Adolf Hitler if you sign this petition. And if not now, took back their Facebook post. They endorsed Hossam Saleh's whining about his firing on Twitter. And then after we singled them out, look at it, I wrote about if not now, I don't think even their supporters are in favor of going into a synagogue in West Jerusalem and murdering people. They took down their post. But we need help with that. We need people who are online looking. In the end, we're all journalists. How many of you are on Facebook? How many of you are on Twitter? How many of you are on Instagram? People with younger children, maybe. How many of you are on Telegram? None. How many of you are on LinkedIn? LinkedIn is social media, it counts. People post everything there now. How many of you are on Snapchat? How many of you are on TikTok? One, youngest other person. All right. So the slogan of the Israeli Water Authority is Chavala Kotipa, every drop matters. But now it's bigger with celebrities. We follow the celebrities because when a Bella Hadid or even Susan Sarandon, that actor guy that's in all those movies lately, Blossom. When these guys write things against this, the guy was the Incredible Hulk. Mark Ruffalo. He's not Earth. So when they write things, we make sure to counter it, to make people know the truth. Yes.
Are you screening celebrities and journalists for being false about Israel, anti-Zionist, or are you also screening for anti-Semitism, like the two, the phase one, phase two?
Yeah, great
which
question.
are
We're
the
not
same, but,
No, but we're not in the Kanye West business. Maybe if we were, it would be good. I think you can have an organization that could be dealing with nothing but Kanye. But no, the way it was put to me by my board of directors when I took over and I was figuring out what we do, he said, we don't cover anti-Semitism against a Jew on the subway in Brooklyn. That's not us, except if they said, Israel kills Palestinians. And because of that, they attack. But if you attack him for being circumcised, then that's not us. And Kanye did not mention the Jewish state this time. Not yet. If he did, we'll be ready. But we have plenty on our plate without Kanye. Yes, sir.
You mentioned
You
the
know
problems
Kanye.
with the IDF. You mentioned the problems with the IDF and their insensitivity to PR. Have you been able to help them and make any progress?
Yes, I met with the head, the new English head of the IDF, who started the day before the war, English spokesman of the IDF, Colonel Richard Kirsch, and he gets it. He actually didn't need my help. His predecessors maybe did need my help, but he totally gets it. He briefed me on security before I went on this trip. We help each other. Things are coordinated in a beautiful kind of way. The Israeli Foreign Ministry is doing things that never did before and coordinating between different pro-Israel groups, WhatsApp groups where we help each other. We realize that we're all on the same team, and it takes a village. Yes, Sue.
I remember the first time I heard about you, about Honest Reporting anyway, was we had a presentation about how Israel never shows a Israeli carrying a dead child, and we'll never win the war on because
We don't embrace our victimhood enough.
yeah, we don't. Well, it's not halachically proper to display a dead body that way. And so that we were on the losing side because that was not a characteristic of Muslim religion. Do you feel the same way? I mean, as
No.
head of.
No,
Okay.
we need to embrace our victimhood. And I've said on college campuses, I met with students at NYU right after Pittsburgh, and I said, you gotta be milking this as disgusting as this. This just reminds us that we're the other students on campus, that we're the most discriminated against minority in America, and we need to be treated like that in a society like we have today. When you had bus bombings, the first times they didn't show anything, and they were very respectful of the dead. And after a while, they took the pictures of the buses and the bus itself and took it on tour in America to hit the message home. And unfortunately, that's what we have to be doing nowadays. Great question. Yes, sir. The guy who worships Bibi.
I don't worship him. I just think he's good for Israel.
Okay.
You know, people might agree, like you said, half might agree, half might want him dead, but I don't worship him. I just think he's good for Israel. And he's done really well over the last 25 years. Does he have problems? Yeah, we all have problems, but he is what he is. But that's not my question. My question is really about what's your feelings about the upcoming elections with, you know, people like Ben, Shaked, maybe.
Bennett's not running.
Not Ben, I mean, Shaked.
Shaked won't cross the electoral
I
threshold.
know, so, but she actually just reached out to Netanyahu, which I don't know how receptive he was, but,
Not at
you
all.
know, where do you see, my question is, where do you see those votes going, or are they just gonna be lost? And I think that could have a drastic effect on the election, the same way, like you just said, with the Arab, 3 parties, 2 of them, or maybe even all 3 might not cross the line.
No, it won't be all 3, but look, I mean, that would be absolutely atrocious if that happened. There were 7 seats that were won by Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked and the Yamina party in the last election. And whoever felt that they were swindled, that they thought they were going to get Bibi as prime minister and were voting for Yamina, they've gone back to Likud and other satellite parties. They obviously didn't read the Jerusalem Post, because I wrote every day that Bennett was going to do that. That Bennett would be joining with Lapid and forming a government. Please look it up. I have the story right the entire time. We had a war in Gaza. Bennett went on TV and said he's not going to join with the Arabs anymore. And I wrote that following day, he's just saying it, he still will. And he did. So, but whoever didn't think that, whoever was voting for Bennett to be Bennett, like the guy to the right of you, then they might be supporting Benny Gantz right now because he's got Tsar there and Matan Kahana, who was the closest guy to Bennett in recent years, Air Force commander, was the Minister of Religious Services. We have time for one more question. Yes.
I can say this in 3 words. Itamar Ben-Gvir.
Yeah. What about him?
But yeah,
That's
do
good.
you think if he joins the government in a prominent role, we're gonna have problems dealing with him
Yeah.
in America?
Yeah.
Be addressed and pushed
If
back.
people haven't heard the name Itamar Ben-Gvir, they're going to hear about it, because if Netanyahu forms a government, he's going to be a minister, maybe even a high-ranking minister, maybe a minister of police, and he's a man who favors expelling. He used to say expelling Arabs, which is racism, and he wouldn't be allowed to run if he would say that again. He says expelling terrorists, or he even still talks a little about expelling disloyal, so as defined by whom. That's a problem. Expelling terrorists may be less of a problem. Peres and Rabin did it. They expelled terrorists in Lebanon. But this is, he talked about forming a ministry of encouraging migration. That's something that'll look really awful to the world. And now, but you have to put into perspective. Bibi, every government he's formed except one, has had a left-wing fig leaf. He's left out the most right-wing party and formed a government with centrist and left-wing parties to look better to the world. Whether he would not do that this time because the more right-wing parties would help his trial stop and others wouldn't, remains to be seen. And let's say that the religious Zionist party of Itamar Ben-Gvir does enter a Netanyahu-led coalition. Well, look at the current government. Who is the second highest ranking minister in the second largest party, which is what Itamar Ben-Gvir would be? The answer is Pnina Tamano-Shata, the Minister of Aliyah and Immigration from Benny Gantz's blue and white party. She's not the most influential person in the world. So maybe we're just making a big deal out of it because it looks interesting in the media, and the more extreme we highlight to get better ratings ourselves. I'm going to end with a story of just what happened the last time I was here, not too far away from Albany, when I went to Syracuse. I had arrived really late the night before. I'd spoken in Binghamton the night before, and on campus, and I was kind of lost. And I had filled up gas, and there was nobody at the gas station to help me figure out how to get where I was going. And I didn't have Wi-Fi data for my GPS, and I got stopped by a cop. And I said, "Oh, thank you for stopping me. I don't know where I am. Please help me." And he said, "I'll help you, but first give me your license." I said, "No problem." He comes back with a ticket. And I said, "I asked you for help and you give me a ticket?" And he said, "Your lights aren't on." I guess I hadn't turned them off or on after the gas station, didn't even realize. And I said, "Well, at least are you going to help me?" And he says, "No, use your GPS. I got to go." The following morning, I spoke at the Jewish Federation of Syracuse. And I told this story right at the beginning of my talk. And somebody in the crowd raises a hand and just says, "Let me see your ticket." I said, "Fine, whatever." I gave him the ticket and I did my talk. I finished my talk and I said, "Okay, now it's time for questions." And that guy raises his hand and he says, "The judge was my cousin. You've been found innocent. Have a nice day." So I think that says something really special about the Jews, and I'm very proud to be a Jew, and I know you are too, and I appreciate what Rob has done in building this Jewish community. Thank you very much.